Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and last time both armies shifted further east. Now, Grant seeks to land a decisive blow against Lee. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, and purchase something from the Teespring store or Etsy shop. Every little bit helps. Thank you. Ulysses S. Grant telegraphed Washington to send all the available troops that could be scraped together. The Overland Campaign was only 10 days old, yet his casualties had mounted to over 30,000. 20,000 troops would be on their way to him very soon, but he still needed to deal with Lee in his front while he waited for reinforcements. Most of his troops had shifted a great deal during the 14th to the 17th of May. Grant believed that Lee's right flank would be weak and ordered Horatio Wright to test that flank, but he ran into stiff resistance and told Grant as much. Grant would come up with another plan. Richard Ewell's 2nd Corps was battered, and Grant believed, with enough pressure and support, he could break that new line that Robert E. Lee formed south of the Harrison home. Through the night of the 17th and into the early morning of the 18th, Wright's 6th Corps and Hancock's 2nd Corps formed in almost their exact same positions as their May 12th attack on the Muleshoe. At 4:30 a.m., Hancock's 3 divisions and 2 of Wright's divisions stepped off toward the new line of Confederate works. It was an early morning attack, but it didn't catch the Confederates off guard. They were ready with guns loaded and artillery trained on the ground in front of them. One soldier remembered the enemy's line of dead had been exposed to the hot rays of the sun for 6 days, and with the intense heat their faces had turned black and putrefaction set in. The line of battle wavered as the horrible sight presented itself to their view, but this was but for a moment, when everyone made an effort to step between the bodies. The march to the Confederate line convinced Brigadier General Joshua Owen that the attack was futile, and he withdrew without ever making contact with the enemy. This action would earn him a court-martial and loss of his command. The rest of the troops continued, but they, along with 2 brigades from Burnside's corps, were subjected to a withering fire from the Confederate entrenchments. The attacks quickly broke down, and the Union brigades got caught in a destructive fire that made them hug the ground for protection. Hancock asked for the attack to be called off, and it was agreed that his troops wouldn't attack anymore. It was difficult, but the troops extricated themselves from the destructive fire of artillery, which had nearly been solely responsible for throwing back the attackers. The attack racked up around 1,500 more casualties for the Union, considerably less for the Confederacy. By the end of the day on the 18th, Grant decided that he would no longer try to break Lee's line. It was far too strong, and he could rush troops to plug any hole that was made by an attack. Grant hoped that if he moved one of his corps away from the battlefield, that Lee would leave his entrenchments to go after it, in an attempt to defeat it while it was alone. Then, as Lee's army moved south, he could bring it to battle outside of fortifications with the other 3 corps. He chose Hancock's corps to maneuver south and try to get to the crossing of the North Anna River. Lee was unsure about Grant's next move. He wrote to President Jefferson Davis that he couldn't attack Grant with his limited resources and tired troops. Richard Ewell's corps reported that there were no Federals in their front, so Lee authorized a reconnaissance in force by Ewell's corps to gauge the disposition of the Union Army. Robert Rhodes and John B. Gordon's divisions left the flank and made their way across the Nye River. No Union forces were in their way until they got across the river. Rhodes's men were in the lead when they came into contact with Robert Tyler's division, made up of heavy artillery units given rifles to fight as infantry. Rhodes's men came into contact with the 2nd New York Heavy Artillery and the 1st Massachusetts Heavy Artillery. The Bay State Regiment divided itself into 3 battalions to engage with the rebels. The 1st Battalion was overpowered by Ramser's North Carolinians. Hoping to capitalize on his own momentum, Ramser charged the Union line, but as one Union soldier said, the firing was more than human flesh and blood could stand, and the Tar Heels fell back. Ramser would attack the position at least 2 more times, but failed each time. The rest of his division came up, giving him additional support. However, Union reinforcements were also coming to the field. John B. Gordon's division fell onto Rhodes's left flank to hold off the heavy artillery regiments, but Union 2nd Corps troops were overlapping their position. John Crocker's brigade rushed forward and sent back William Terry's Virginians. The Confederate left flank appeared to be caving in, but Gordon sent John Hoffman's brigade to shore up the flank. Darkness was now covering the battlefield, ending the fight at the Harris Farm and the entire Battle of Spotsylvania Court House. From May 8th to the 19th, the Army of the Potomac and the Army of Northern Virginia engaged in a brutal battle that saw some of the most intense fighting of the entire American Civil War. The brutality and the near constant battling make Spotsylvania stand out as the bloodiest battle of the Overland Campaign. Ulysses S. Grant hoped to destroy Robert E. Lee's army, but it hadn't happened. Lee held on, moving troops to fill breakthroughs and rushing reinforcements to vulnerable areas. Neither did Lee destroy Grant's army. In all reality, it was a draw, with both sides claiming victory. Lee had successfully blocked Grant from getting around his flank into Spotsylvania Court House, and Grant bloodied Lee's beleaguered army, inflicting more casualties that Lee couldn't replace. In the end, the Union lost 18,399 men, 2,725 killed, 13,416 wounded, and 2,258 missing and captured. The Confederacy lost 12,687 troops, 1,515 killed, 5,415 wounded, and 5,758 missing and captured. The Overland Campaign was less than 3 weeks old, but had produced over 60,000 casualties.